Ah, the wonderful world of Life is Strange. I just love sitting on these menu screens, listening to the wonderfully calming music of acoustic guitars and whispering winds. Honestly, it's kind of stress relieving and a great precursor to the many very stressful life or death situations concerning very real issues of depression, anxiety, and grief that you will be thrown into throughout the game. Oh dear. Life is Strange is probably one of the more popular franchises within the choice-based adventure game genre, otherwise known as Kabagaga. It has a very cemented identity in gaming culture for its great facial animations and amazing dialogue.
Now you're totally stuck in the retro zone. Sad face.
Now, let's talk business.
You hella saved my life.
Let's go ape!
Okay, it's rather infamous for those things actually, but it managed to capture the hearts of many players around the world. People were touched by the meaningful story of Max Caulfield. In fact, it won all the awards listed on the back of this box here, most of which are narrative-based, which just gives me all sorts of tingles. Narrative's my bread and butter, and Life is Strange still stands as one of the most emotionally impactful games I've ever played. It's also one of the messiest games I've ever played. As you can see, I'm in a bit of a conundrum. It can be such a frustrating story to get through, especially once you get to the end. I think episode 5 is where a lot of people decided to jump ship on Life is Strange. If the surplus of Hellos didn't force you to rethink your entire life up to that point, then this episode's time-hopping shenanigans sure did. But of course, by episode 5, they already had your money! I'm sorry, that was kind of aggressive. Episode 5 is just a mess. It's all over the place, completely unfocused, and you're trying so hard to figure out what's going on most of the time that you can't focus on the emotional conclusions that are being dumped into your lap. And then they just throw a stealth section in there just for funsies, because why not? There are certainly good things about episode 5. Nathan's last voicemail to Max is surprisingly heartbreaking, especially for a character that's been such a dick the entire game. For a moment, even if only that one moment, he was vulnerable and scared. You were able to see a character that wasn't just an asshole, but a victim to obvious mental problems he wasn't getting help for, and other assholes that were taking advantage of that very fact. There's also the wonderful redemption moment of David where he comes in and beats Jefferson's ass. Whoa, kick him in the shins and tear off his fingernails, I want to see blood! But again, those great moments of human emotion are buried underneath confusing, multi-layered time travel antics. Of course, episode 5 wasn't the first time Life is Strange started showing its cracks. Remember in episode 4 when you had to choose whether or not to pull the plug on your best friend in an alternate reality, only for you to almost immediately go back to your original timeline and have it ultimately mean nothing? Remember that? I remember. Oh no, it's fine, don't mind me. Just experiencing emotional trauma for no good reason. I'm having a great time. But that's actually indicative of just how good this game is at making you care. It wasn't the simple action of having to pull the plug on Chloe that distressed me. It was the fact that I, Max, had put her there by messing with time. It was because I saw just how much pain and suffering would result from either option I chose. It was because I had grown to love these characters despite the game's most earnest attempts to get me not to, and that's commendable. The characters are one of the most genuine aspects of the game. Max was a shy dork and anxious young adult, terrified of how others perceived her. She was a wallflower, stuck in the most tumultuous period of her life without any guides or roadmaps. She signs her text as MaxOXO, I love her to death, she's adorable. Also, I take personal offense when people call Max boring because Max is basically me. Then there's Chloe. I don't like Chloe. I never liked Chloe. The only reason I ever cared about Chloe is because Max cared about Chloe. But that doesn't mean she isn't an interesting and complex character. While I kind of hated her inability to look at things from other perspectives, as well as her insistence that she was always the victim in every situation, I still find her to be a decently developed character. From the perspective of Chloe, everything seems to hate her, including the universe itself. It kills off her dad, sends her best friend away immediately after the fact, gives her a polar opposite for her stepdad, and then takes away the one good thing she felt she had in life. Rachel. As much as I disliked her character, that scene in episode 4 where she breaks down at Rachel's grave is still one of the hardest scenes I've ever had to watch in a video game. It's pretty rough. I think that just because Chloe is unlikable doesn't necessarily mean she isn't a good character. And I know that there are many people, mostly the people who call Max boring, who love Chloe to death and would sacrifice an entire town in order to save her. 47% of people to be exact. And I think that's commendable as well. Off the top of my head, I can't think of another character quite like that. She isn't like a love-to-hate her kind of character like most purposefully unlikable characters are. She simply is. She's as likable or unlikable as you perceive her to be. She's a person who's been beaten down by life in every way imaginable before she even moved out of her parents' house, and she's still standing. Whether or not you like Chloe as a character, you gotta give her credit for just how little she cares about how others think of her. Something that stands in direct opposition to Max's low self-worth. Chloe manages to be what Max needs regardless of her own lack of introspection. And for those people that think Life is Strange is actually Chloe's story, no. Of course, your interpretation is just as valid as mine, but I can't agree that this is anything but Max's story. Chloe is a side character with a story of her own, an example for Max to see what it looks like when you let your insecurities go for a second. Of course, Chloe has to learn the worth of those insecurities for herself, realizing that shame and humility do have a place in one's identity, but it's mostly about Max learning that she is whoever she wants herself to be. Putting on the clothes of Rachel doesn't make her Rachel, and that's not what she should be or has to be. She doesn't have to be like Rachel, she doesn't have to be like Chloe. She just needs to be Max, herself. She has to be okay with who she is, no matter what anyone else says, no matter what she tells herself. When Max goes to the top of that roof to talk down Kate, she has no time power to help her succeed. That thing that made her special, that thing that made her interesting, it isn't what's going to help her. She has to just believe in her own ability to convince Kate that life is worth living. But sometimes you still fail. Sometimes you lose and you don't get to go back in time and fix it. There's a lot of failure in Life is Strange, and not just in the obvious way. Sure, you can fail to save Kate, or fail to talk down Frank successfully, or fail to take care of your plant, but you also have characters like Chloe who fail to recognize their own flaws. You have a character like David who fails to change despite his recognition of his faults. You have a character like Nathan who fails to realize that his failures are failures by those who are supposed to be there to help him. And for as many failures you can fix by way of extremely limited time powers TM, there are just as many things you can't fix. Just as many failures you or others have to live with. You can't go back and fix Nathan's relationship with his parents and the neglectful attitude towards his mental health. You can't go back and fix the obviously disturbed Mark Jefferson. You can't go back and save Chloe's dad, because if you do, it only creates an equally terrible reality in its stead. There is the idea that there is failure in these inabilities. Max feels like she has failed when she can't save William. Max feels like she has failed when she can't save Kate. She feels like she has failed when she can't save a random trucker from the storm, but the thing is, Max has to fail. The game is constantly pitting you against somebody, forcing you to take one side over another. You're either on David's good side or Chloe's good side at any one point. You're always against Nathan, unable to help him in any real way. To somebody, you're failing them, and you can't do anything about it. I hear about how one of Life is Strange's greatest faults is how it all comes down to one choice in the end. How your choices didn't matter then. That it all ends up the same way no matter what you do. But what they don't realize is that's the point. Sometimes you're helpless to save people. Sometimes, no matter how hard you try to make things happy, no matter how hard you try to escape tragedy or find a happy ending, no matter how hard you try to leave behind any pain and suffering, it always finds its way back. Pain is inevitable. Failure is inevitable. You can't save everybody, and sometimes saving one person means hurting another. All you can really do is keep moving forward. For as much as you might want to turn back time, fix things, fix your failures, fix yourself, you can't. People get hurt. People die. But you can't get snagged on the pains of the past. Life happens and it sucks and it hurts, but you have to keep going, because what else are you going to do? I love Life is Strange in spite of the mess of a game that it is, because within it I see pain, I see failure, and I see hope. I see life itself. Because life is a messy, sucky thing sometimes. If you chose to let Chloe die, in the end, she dies a sad, angry girl who never even knew the fate of the person she cared about the most, while you cry behind a bathroom stall. In fact, it's the thing many people cite as being the reason they chose to sacrifice the town instead. It wasn't fair to Chloe, but it's not fair to Arcadia Bay either. No matter what you do, someone dies. No matter what you do, it isn't fair. Life sucks like that. But all we can do is dry our tears, stand back up, and keep moving forward. We can't blame ourselves for the pain of others. We can't beat ourselves up because we are always going to be what someone doesn't want us to be. We have to be okay with who we are, be okay with our failures, be okay with our pain, because it's just another part of life. And life certainly is strange. Did I really just say that? Who the hell wrote this schlock? Oh, wait. That's me.